Hi, welcome to Gary's Shortlist podcast. Today we're meeting with Kate Stuckey, who is a personal trainer, and today we're going to have a chat about stress and all things regarding stress, some of the signs that you need to be looking out for, and also some of the coping mechanisms and also some of the controls that you might put in place and or somewhere you might need to reach out to get some guidance. Kate, thanks for coming in. It's really interesting topic we're going to talk about today, and I really appreciate your time and your expertise. And I guess it's a really good lead into, mental health is obviously a very big, broad area. I think it'd be fair to say, and I think you might agree, that if you'd have to be sort of living under a rock in the last sort of 18 months, if you haven't, particularly with COVID, that we haven't seen, a spotlight and a strong awareness around mental health, as a result of COVID, in fact. Construction industry, rampant with mental health issues. And I thought someone with your background and your expertise, you obviously have a background in construction, and I thought with your expertise, you might be able to come in and maybe pick a nice little piece for us to have a chat about, so we don't get sort of too bogged down into the big broad spectrum, I guess. And you suggested perhaps we talk about stress.
Stress, well, yes, which is rampant in construction. We focused a lot on it when we worked together, Gary, and I suppose today we should probably talk about what is stress and how to manage that.
I think, I was an executive in construction, and I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a level of stress, and I think there's a level of stress for anyone, regardless of what their role is. I would think it's how long that stress, that exposure to that, strong levels of stress, and what that impact is to somebody. I found that in my role there was bursts of stress. So being in safety, there was always a fire to put out, and then the fire would go, and life would be great again, and then you'd find yourself under stress. And I guess there's probably good stress and bad stress. And I certainly feel that in working in risk management, as I did, it was very sobering, one of a better word, and it was at the same time interesting to see the commercial aspects of construction, that the pressures that are put on project management teams and project managers, and those guys in particular. I admire project managers in the fact that they have so much stress, and I think the only ones that survive are the ones that manage their stress, because it's such a competitive, tough industry.
Absolutely, and that comes down to planning, which is probably one of the big stress management tools you have. So if you're not organised, you're not, everything's going to be up in the air. So it's really about organising your day, and project managers will filter their stress down to the teams if they're not able to manage that as well. And as you know, there's time constraints. There's guys don't really talk to each other about their problems either. They're holding it all in. They deal with it, and then it usually ends up in a big sort of outburst. But as we spoke earlier, Gary, like 80% of modern problem illnesses are caused by stress. 80%. So that's incredible. So being able to manage your stress is really important, and finding that perfect stress management tool for you.
So I think the perfect stress management tool for a lot of people in construction is going home and just getting drunk.
And can you imagine the after effects of that, dealing with the next day and having a hangover, and then dealing with stress as well?
I'm sure it's not siloed to construction.
No.
But it's very sad to think that there are people out there that are really leaning on drugs and alcohol to get through the stresses that they've got, which is just compounding, right?
Absolutely. And then it just leads on to eating poorly, having problems with your family if you're out drinking and taking drugs all the time, and just what it does to your mental health, the constant, you're not giving yourself a break, you're not giving yourself time to breathe and adjust. So it's like a big roll-on effect.
And then you've got the roller coaster of the hours that construction people need to work. You mentioned families, so it's getting home at night, and if you've got tiny kids, they're in bed, and your partner's looking at you saying, "Where have you been?" The hard work's been done.
It's just not a life, and
it's a tough industry. So, all right, so we've probably put a big enough downer on that. But I think perhaps we've touched on some of the effects, I guess, but and maybe we can talk right at the end about where people can go for help and guidance if they feel that stress is getting the better of them. But I guess just to go back to what I said earlier about maybe there are certain levels of stress that keep us motivated, and is that
eustress, which is the good stress, which is the positive. It keeps you motivated. It gets you up in the morning. There's a challenge,
right.
And then you've got de-stress, obviously, which is not the good stress.
Right.
The stuff that weighs you down. You can't see a way out, and you start to fall into that pit, and you can't pick yourself up. So yes, a certain amount of stress in everyday life is what we need to keep going. It's just when it switches to that de-stress, and then how to manage that. So.
Do you think management? Let's use construction. Do you think management in construction, perhaps not intentionally, might put some of the younger members where they promote them to a more senior level and give them, I guess, opportunity, but at the same time give them a lot more stress than they probably expected based on their skill set, perhaps, and their experience?
Absolutely. They're always pushing people to step up more. They're always loading them up with extra stuff, helping them grow. But at the same time, if you're not planned and you're not that type of person that can deal with it, and they usually pick the people that are good at handling their stress. But it goes back to being organised, having the backup, the management behind you in case there are problems, and someone you can sort of lean back on if you need that. And I feel like that's probably where a lot of the construction industry falls back, is not having that support behind you. And what do you do? And guys don't talk. It's just
guys don't talk, and I don't think it would be common for a lot of people to even have spoken about stress management and stress, and or had access to good information and or coaching around it. I mean, it'd be really nice to see the construction industry. I mean, as a lot of us know, that there's a lot of talk about the 5-day working week in construction. There are obviously some pros and cons there, I would think, but the pros being that hopefully that there'd be less stress and pressures of somebody working 6 and sometimes 7 days a week,
especially as that project's nearing the end, isn't it? All those hours.
Absolutely.
And there's lots of industries that are finding 5 days are better, and especially during COVID, I think it's been a real awakening of what can be achieved on less hours and not being there. So hopefully that changes a few things. Longer hours during the week, maybe get the weekends off. I think that would be extremely beneficial. It can't always happen. We know what construction's like. There's time constraints to every project.
So with if we were talking to someone today, or if there's somebody listening today that's under a lot of stress, what could the signs be if they don't even recognise it themselves?
Well, everybody's different, and there's 4 different areas to stress. There's behavioural, emotional, physical and emotional. So I know what stress feels like to me. I know I get very hot and cranky, and I just can't, nothing's going through my head. I don't know, what are you like when you're under stress?
I sort of retreat. I start to sort of retreat and try and find my own space and get away from noise, I guess.
Okay,
get
so
away
you're
from
a runner?
the noise. Yeah, I'm a runner. But yeah, you don't run very far.
No, you can't, can you? I suppose it's really working out what your signs of stress are. So are you getting flustered? You can't sleep at night? Sleeplessness is one of the big stress signals. Loss of appetite, just not being able to relax, getting angry all the time, crying. I know not you guys don't do much of that, but crying could be a big thing. Shouting at people all day on site. So it's really finding what it is that is your stress signal. Maybe talking to your team about, hang on, when I'm starting to get stressed, this is what I start behaving like.
Yeah.
Please keep an eye out in case I don't see it.
That's a really
and then
good
pull
point.
me up on that when it does get like that. But there's so many stress management tools, and as I said earlier, it's about finding which one really, really works for you. So planning is just a massive one, planning your day. And I know in construction things change all the time. You could go in, be dealing with one thing, and then there's an emergency over here and the whole day goes to crap, basically. Another one is getting enough sleep. I don't know, did you sleep much during your...
I've always been a big sleeper. So I'm early to bed and I'm really early out of bed. But without that, I'm just a mess.
Yeah. Absolutely, you just can't deal with life, can you?
Yeah.
I know I'm the same.
You mentioned planning, and in construction, we talk about planning in many, many facets of the business, and you can never deny that good planning is good for everything, right? Yeah. And the reason I picked planning to have a look at now is we have a new project, for example, we start building the project team. I think to take a step back before we start doing the day-to-day planning, I think going like a big step back and going, what's the resourcing of the project team? If a team isn't resourced and doesn't have the right budget for the job, doesn't have the right program for the job, etc., I think that's already setting the boundaries, or sort of setting the parameters to just end up in a stress mess, right?
Yeah.
And I think planning's super important, but I just think as an industry, we say that consistently.
Yeah.
However, we set ourselves up to fail just about every time when we say, okay, you're out there, you've got 2 guys to work with you, and you say, yeah, but it's a $200 million job. Yeah, you'll be right.
Yeah.
And, and that's the competitive nature of the industry.
Yeah.
It's not that anyone's trying to set anyone up to fall over.
Is it competitive? It's also resources. If a job's been finished and you don't have people
Correct.
on there, you don't want to take people on, otherwise you can have too many people. So, yeah, resourcing is a massive, massive problem, and that's the area I worked in for a number of years. If you, in the perfect world, there would be enough people, but it's just not the perfect world.
The perfect world. I used to say to a lot of construction teams when I'd walk onto a job, I'd say, hey, I've never heard anybody say that the budget's too big, the program's too long, and we've got way too many guys on this job.
Yes, how amazing would that be? No.
So it tells us that, and again, I talk about the commercial aspects, is that it does need to be run lean and mean, I guess. Otherwise, you're probably not in the industry with the number of projects that you're hoping to have. So there's a balance. There's clearly a balance. And, to take your point about planning, I just encourage the listeners to not think it's about planning from Monday to Friday and what time you're having lunch. It's a lot more complex than that. It's Absolutely. Like going right back to day one and saying, what's the quality of subcontractors I might have on my job? Because I know that if you're dealing with great contractors and not so great contractors, that'll affect the journey as well, and vice versa for the contractor.
That's right. It's just trying to fit all those pieces in together at the right time, isn't it? And that can't always happen. So, as I say, in an ideal world, we had enough. There would always be enough resources, but unfortunately, it's not an ideal world.
It's clear that construction industry is a tough industry, and I think most people get paid very well to be in the construction industry, and I think that's a bit of a given. What are some of the elements I think that people could look at in themselves to see how well they could manage stress or manage that mesh stress a little better?
Well, there's quite a few things, and I suppose I don't know about you, but I kept hearing the excuse, I just don't have time. Yeah. But it's really important to look after yourself in this kind of industry, because if you're not firing at 100%, then you're not going to do a good job and probably drag out your tasks a lot longer than they need to be. So I think the key elements to giving yourself the best start and keeping yourself at the top of your game is probably food, having a good diet, making sure you're eating enough. Obviously, you've been around construction. I have too, and I walk around the site, and the stuff I saw the guys eating and drinking, like high energy drinks.
Yeah, it's a lot.
The greasy bacon egg rolls, which is nothing wrong with a bacon and egg roll, but it's like a continuous, poor diet is not going to give you the energy to get through the day. And living off energy drinks and coffee is also not going to help. You'll crash and burn eventually. So we really need to look at the diets and getting enough of your proteins and your carbs and your fats and all the good stuff, which most people know.
So Kate, sorry, just to cut you there, you have a background in nutrition as well.
Yes. Well, I'm actually an eating coach, so
right.
I help people with any kind of disordered eating
right.
problems, but I also health and wellness coach as well. So
right.
Bit of everything.
And your observations in construction are the same as mine. I mean, and we're all guilty of it at times, as you probably point out. But I think that prolonged. I had many times in construction where we'd have an ambulance called to a site because we thought someone was having a heart attack, and they'd have the defib out, and then we'd find out that they'd had a couple of V's for breakfast. Yeah. And 30 odd year old guys.
Yeah. So it all comes down to planning, giving yourself maybe at the weekend on a Sunday, food prepping for the week, making sure you have enough cooked meals to be able to take to work. You need to keep your energy up. So to have that, being able to take packed lunch off to work, brilliant, and not living off chips and high energy drinks. Getting enough sleep, which we touched on earlier, is so important. So the Australian guidelines for sleep are between sort of 6 to 8 hours a night, and I know many of the construction guys are nowhere near that.
Yeah.
I would love to have 9 or 10, but
I get by on 8.
Yeah.
And
you get by on 8.
Any less than 8, I'm just a really cranky old guy.
Yeah.
And
you're pretty old now, Gary. So sleep's a really, really important thing, and sometimes it'd be hard to sleep if you're stressed. So you get home and you're just on a buzz and you've watched some, crazy TV, you're on your phone trying to do some work before you go to bed. You're not going to sleep well. You're just going to be in a headspace. So it's about sort of winding down to be able to get that good sleep. And, long hours at construction, so it's not always going to be easy to do. Exercise is another massive thing. We talk about it quite a lot, Gary. If I don't train in the morning, I'm really cranky. Some of the guys, it's too early to go and train in the morning, and sometimes it's too late at night and you're exhausted after working all day. But to be able to fit some kind of exercise into your day, even if it's 30-minute walk or quick walk, just something.
It's extremely important. And I think in construction, in my time in construction, we would talk about it a lot. We'd have consultants come in and talk about it a lot. And I think the industry, not necessarily organisations, but the industry as a whole has almost a bit of an underlying current that those that aren't working long hours are the bludgers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the long hours have an impact, particularly longer term, obviously. And the exercise is paramount. And I know that during my career in safety, there was periods where I would not exercise, and I can look back at it as clear as a bell now and say they were the toughest periods because I thought by working harder, the mess would clean up, and I'd go 6 months, gain a hell of a lot of weight, stress levels going through the roof, and then luckily you don't fall off the wagon and end up in a heap. And I've seen many project managers seek professional help through mental breakdowns and the like, and it's attributed directly to their jobs.
Yeah. Sort of going back to exercise, there's so much research that's been done that shows that exercise helps reduce anxiety, depression, and all those mental health disorders. So while it's hard to fit it in, again, it's that planning of the day and working out, if you get up an hour earlier in the morning, even though it's a very early start, just to get that done, just to get a bit of clarity, just to get that.
I used to say to a lot of guys in construction, an observation that I had was that all businesses have a business plan, however great or however small. They've got this business plan, and they have targets and they have KPIs and they have people accountable to it, and then at mid-year they do a review and see how they're going against the business plan, etc. But nobody that works in their business has their own plan.
No.
And their own plan might be, I just want to look after myself. I want to get 7 hours sleep consistently.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that my weight remains around here. I want to get 30 minutes exercise in so many times a week. And then when we break that down, when people are working in an organisation and going, yeah, all they seem to be doing is working for the business's business plan, yet I have no plan for myself in terms of my own well-being and or short or long-term outlook.
Well, they are starting to listen, I think, because of, I suppose, all the statistics of the people that do have mental health and the people that have been reaching out to Mend, and exercise and looking after yourself is becoming more and more of a thing. We've been to stress management courses, so it is becoming a lot more accepted that we need to have more of that in work. It's just, and probably another thing, really important thing, is reaching out when you need help. A lot of you guys don't do that, and that is a massive construction thing, not reaching out when you need help, whether that be to a colleague, a friend, or anyone, but you really, reach out. Tell someone you're struggling.
I think reaching out, I totally agree, and I think getting professional help is probably the best step. My only concern is that some organisations see that as a weakness, and I could be challenged on that. But I've actually seen some people that have gone through some serious mental health issues as project managers, perhaps, and they almost get sidelined. They get sidelined in the business, and there's a lot of whispering in the circles in the head office saying, "Oh, we've got a problem."
Wow.
And I think that's why a lot of guys don't speak out. They may or may not have witnessed that, but I have, and that really concerns me that. You put your hand up for that help in the organisation, and it's like, whoa, we've got a problem, and is this going to backfire on the business in some way? And things. It's an interesting space, but I totally concur with you that that's seeking professional help is probably a really smart step. Most good organisations now have employee assistance programs where it can be anonymous. And
that's right.
You pick up the phone and you can chat with a counsellor for free. I think that's come a long way.
Absolutely.
And I think that's fantastic.
But then you have support groups, you have the people outside, but you really just need to put your hand up. I'm struggling, I can't deal with this. All my stress signals are going off. I'm not sleeping. You just need to reach out, and that's it's an industry thing. It's a male ego thing as well, and I totally get there will be whispers if it comes out, but I suppose it's what's important, what's the best for you, what's the best for the company as well, but more importantly, what's best for you. So reaching out.
So Kate, if anybody's listening today and some of the things that we've spoken about are resonating with them, and they feel that they might benefit from talking with somebody or even get more serious help, what would be the first things you would sort of walk through as some guidance?
I would say reach out to your GP. They can put you on a mental health plan and get you some discounted counselling. There's also Mates in Construction, which most people should know. It's a
terrific organisation.
It's an construction industry organisation, so they're there to help with any of these kind of things.
A big shout out to Mates in Construction. I've seen them in action in my time in construction. I took a couple of referrals to them, and they were fantastic. There was
we've obviously had them come in and help with some
they came and did some training and stuff with the organisations that we've been working in, and so they're a big shout out to those guys. Actually, we should get them on the podcast. They're awesome.
You should. And your employee assistance programs, so speak to HR, or most of the time they're anonymous, so you can go along and have a chat with them for free.
So I think a lot of workers would be probably more comfortable having a chat with their GP first than walking into HR saying, hey, Gary's got problems. And then all of a sudden the whole office knows. You know?
Absolutely. Which is why it's good some EAPs you can contact, directly.
Anonymous. Yeah. Terrific. Well, look, I think we've covered a little bit of ground here today. I think it's something we can all relate to because we all go through stress in ebbs and flows. And I think those little techniques around diet, planning, exercise, etc., are big ones. I'd finish by my little two bobs here just to say, knowing too well that drugs and alcohol are huge in the construction industry. In fact, in safety, there was a study done that a lot of incidents that happen in safety are attributed to drugs and alcohol, but we never measure them in that way.
Which is just a coping mechanism, right?
It's a coping mechanism.
Not the best one, though.
No, definitely not the best one, and a spiralling one at that. And I think for a lot of the senior managers out there, it's almost a norm, and I think it's. I'd really encourage anyone that's listening that's got any issues with that to really act on it.
Yeah.
Because it'll change
Absolutely.
your work environment and your performance dramatically.
Yeah, and putting everyone else at risk as well as yourself.
Yeah, so. I've seen that. Well, look, thank you so much for coming in. It's lovely to see you again, and I really hope that our listeners listening today have picked something up that they might take away and or refer to a friend.
Yep. And if there's anyone has any problems with their food and their disordered
eating, so what can they do? What's
www.myeatingcoach.com.au.
My Eating Coach.
My Eating Coach, yes.
Oh,
so I help anyone with disordered eating patterns.
Right.
Yeah, heal their relationship with food and move on, as well as other coaching on the side. So
terrific. And are you still competing in your
bodybuilding? Oh, I enjoy my cheese and biscuits too much, so no, not at the moment.
But you were not long ago, right?
It's been 3 years now.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe one day. I won, so what's the point in going again?
Absolutely. What did you win?
What was it? The New South Wales Fitness something.
Oh, come on.
Anyway, moving on.
Okay. Thanks so much, Kate. Lovely to see you.
Thanks, Gary.
Cheers. Well, that was Kate Stuckey. I really appreciated Kate's time coming in to have a chat today. She's a fantastic resource, and I hope that you got something out of today's episode. Remember, if you're having any serious issues and you're looking to reach out for some help more immediately, Lifeline is a fantastic resource on 13 11 14. Fantastic resource. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again real soon.